Good morning, everybody. Good to see you all. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and city delegates, good morning and welcome to the World Cities Culture Summit hosted by the City of Dubai. My name is Araf Ahmad Ali. I'm the Director of Culture at the City of Amsterdam, but this week I'm the summit's MC. Today we are delighted to be hosting our public session where we welcome Dubai's creative community to connect with city leaders from across the world. This session will be filmed and made available on the World Cities Culture Forum website later this year. Headsets are needed during the panel and it's on your chair, so if you haven't checked it, please do. It gives me great pleasure to welcome Justine Simons, the founder and chair of the World Cities Culture Forum and Deputy Mayor for Culture and Creative Industries for London. Justine?
Thank you. All right, so Your Highness, Your Excellencies, honoured guests, welcome. Welcome everyone to the World Cities Culture Summit 2024 in Dubai. I'm Justine Simons and I am the founder of the World Cities Culture Forum and also the Deputy Mayor for Culture and the Creative Industries in London. We are here in Al Sakal Avenue. It's a leading creative district packed full of galleries, dance studios and is home to organisations, arts organisations and creative startups. Thank you to Mr. Al Sakal for hosting us today and Executive Director Vilma. We have a great audience with us today. We have leaders from 36 cities around the world and a fantastic group of creative and cultural leaders from Dubai. For our Dubai guests, I'll start by explaining who we are. The World Cities Culture Forum is the leading network on global cities and culture. We bring together city leaders from 46 countries over 6 continents. Between us, together, we represent over 270 million people, and we share a common mission. We believe that culture is a golden thread in cities. By that, we mean that culture can address our most pressing urban challenges, from health to education, economy to international reputation. Now, the theme of this year's summit is the future. We're asking how the next generation can shape our world. And so this public session is looking to the future and asking the question, what do creatives need from cities? To set some context, by the year 2050, 7 out of 10 people will live in cities. Cities need to be attractive places to live, to work, and to visit. And culture is an essential ingredient here. In fact, at the World Cities Culture Forum, we believe that if you want to be a successful city in the 21st century, you can't do it without culture. However, as urban populations grow, the needs of creatives can often be overlooked. And this has often been the story of culture in cities. Often at the bottom of the list and seen as a nice to have. But this is the real story of culture in cities. And that's that culture is making a difference across all aspects of city life. Culture is creating jobs, boosting economies, driving tourism, regenerating our neighbourhoods, boosting our health, and bringing communities together. But this success story is fragile. We cannot take it for granted. Creative capitals are entirely dependent on creative people. The artists and musicians, designers and photographers, directors and producers. But life as a creative can be tough. Space is expensive. Work can be unpredictable for this largely freelance workforce. Income often falls below the minimum wage. So to be a creative in a big city needs grit and determination. And it also needs city leaders, people like us, to create the conditions for talent, not just to survive, but to flourish. So just as cities plan for transport and housing, they must also plan for culture. Because cities need a soul. This summit, we're taking a deep look at the next generation of creative voices. Young people today represent 1/3 of the world's population. And this is set to grow. So making sure that young people have a voice is both urgent and important. And many cities around the world are leading the way. So I'm really delighted today to be launching our new report in collaboration with Dubai Culture. It's called Nothing About Us Without Us: Youth and Culture in Global Cities Today. It sets the global context and is packed with case studies revealing how young people can be in the driving seat, shaping the future of our cities. There are copies of the report here, so do please take one when you leave. Supporting the next generation is essential for future-proofing our cities. But what else do cities need to remain successful? What are the challenges do creatives face today and in the future? Myriad challenges is the answer to that. But the good news is, all around the world, city leaders are building compelling arguments and developing imaginative policies. And today we're going to hear firsthand from an esteemed panel of leaders from across 4 continents. Between them, they bring expert perspectives on how to support artists in cities, from cracking the affordable workspace conundrum to innovations in education, and how to navigate new technologies. So without further ado, let's get into it. It is now my huge pleasure to invite to the stage our panelists. Bridget Smythe, who is the city architect for Sydney. Tommaso Sacchi, who is the deputy mayor for culture in Milan. Alanoud Bouhamas, who is a graphic designer at Zayed University here in Dubai. Giada Rosa, who is executive director for Itaú Cultural. And Hani Asfar, who is vice president of innovation at the Institute of Design and Innovation here in Dubai. So we're going to start with some questions, but on the screen you'll see this QR code. So do scan it, and that's a way for you to send in your own questions for when we've had a round of panel questions, and we can take some questions from the floor. Okay. Right, let's get into it. I'm going to start with Bridget. Bridget, as the City of Sydney's chief architect, you've played a pivotal role in transforming the city, from ambitious cultural infrastructure to landmark public art. Now, one challenge we all talk about at cities is how political and delivery timelines are incompatible. So an election cycle can often take 4 or 5 years, but delivering real change can often take decades. But there's one very unique thing about Sydney, your political landscape, in that you have had the same mayor for almost 20 years, and by extension, the same leadership team. So what has this meant for culture and the creative industries?
Thanks, Justine. Our mayor just got re-elected a few weeks ago for her 6th term. So at the end of that term, she would have been Lord Mayor for 24 years with the same senior leadership team. So what does that mean for culture and creativity? Firstly, we have been able to put in place a very strong strategic vision for Sydney to deal with the crises facing us around affordability, equity, livability, climate change, congestion. That's all great for artists and creators as well. But not only have we been able to put in place a strategic vision that's come from the people, from deep listening, we've had the ability to then implement it and show people with the trust from the community that we can make the systemic change in policy and the physical transformations that our city need to be a better city to live in and to humanise the city. And for instance, when we created the strategic vision, we imagined creating a new incredible public boulevard for public life. People said we were crazy, but we were able to implement it. The second thing that we've been able to do with that longevity is to give artists a seat at the table in shaping their city. And I think too often we see architects, planners, engineers have the levers for shaping our city, but why not artists? We're creative, we're problem solvers, so we've made a real commitment to bring artists to the table, to be part of the urban renewal and shaping of our city. And the third thing I think that consistent leadership's been able to do is deeply embed a deep respect and value culture right across our organisation. So we're super fortunate that with that leadership commitment, we've been able to embed a kind of valuing culture in operations, in planning, in strategy and in design. And I think that strong leadership over time really enables you to do those things.
Fantastic. Tommaso, Milan is a globally renowned city for its fashion, design, opera, architectural heritage. In fact, Milan has been a creative capital for centuries. So my question to you is, how do you maintain that leading global position?
First of all, thank you so much, and such a pleasure to be in this space that we are all getting to know and we didn't know before. And I start from the slide that you mentioned during your speech, telling that 1/3 of the global population is under 25. It's impressive, because we as politicians and public administrators, we cannot skip that data, skip that aspect that is part of our contemporary life, that reflects in our investments and is directly involved in what we do in our everyday life. I would suggest 2 ingredients. One is space, infrastructures. We are all designing and projecting new spaces for our communities and for our cities, and it is important to think of the 1/3 of population under 25. Second ingredient is the horizontal palinsesto, the horizontal schedule of events that we are developing. What I mean, starting from the 80s, Milano as a global capital for design started with Salone del Mobile. Many of you told me, are you from Milan? I know Salone del Mobile, I come every year. And is one of the most known moment of the cultural life of Milano. It started as a fair, but then it got into a fuori salone, out of the fair. So fuori means out, meaning that the city organized itself on an alternative way of proposing culture and events and spreading out all the events all around the city. So this has become, in a sense, a style that attracts many, many creatives, because we have been developing projects like the Music City Festival, Piano City, or we work on the fashion weeks, on the same format that brings something outside the official event. This is very important, because if you mix up the new infrastructure with this possibility given to the creative people to participate to the cultural life of the city with a thematic that is, and a topic that is given to people, and then they add what they can bring to the city and to the community. This is a good mix-up of ingredients. I don't have the perfect recipe, of course, nobody has, but I think that focusing on these 2 aspects, new infrastructure and new event and festival that is open to the people and on their participation is very much important. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. All right, Alan Nud, you are creative yourself, a successful graphic designer and a lecturer here in Dubai at Zayed University. I'd love for you to share your personal perspective as a creative. How did you get into graphic design? And how do you think that journey has changed for young people wanting a creative career today?
All right, thank you for that question. I think that is quite important to think about the shift that happened in Dubai in terms of development of the city, but aligned with the creative industry as well. When I started, I went into something called, and I say something because at the time I didn't even know what it was, called design management at the American University of Sharjah. I thought, okay, I studied a little bit of business, sounds interesting to combine it with design. And I don't think it was unique to my situation where a lot of people were not really that aware of some of those disciplines and fields within design because it wasn't really defined at the time. And slowly, you would notice that the creative landscape in Dubai in the 2000s, early 2000s as well, really shifted with different buzzing community from Dubai culture announcing Sikka to Sirkal Avenue to Art Dubai and examples and so on and so forth. So then you would see that the audience, the community got a little bit of a taste of what is a creative industry, still undefined, but we got a taste of it. Yep. And I went on to study the creative and culture entrepreneurship and design in Goldsmiths University, where I started researching a little bit of what is the creative industry in Dubai and the region in general. And again, the policy was not set at the time. And I think the shift started or accelerated when we started, when Dubai developed the creative economy strategy, and I think that was in 2021, but the conversation started in 2019. All of a sudden, we knew what the sectors are within the industry. It was defined. The strategy was in place. The policy was in place. And there were a lot of support resources. We had examples of, for example, creative visas, licensing, freelance licensing, and more recently, the national grant. And all of a sudden, the formalization or the formation of the creative industry is what I believe launched this the creative industry, or like the seriousness of the creative industry in the UAE, as well as what the strategy entailed, which is contributing to the GDP of the UAE and so on and so forth. There's a lot that is in place as well, but I think that was the formalization of that is, and we're in it currently, is what I think sped up, formalized and accelerated the whole industry. And I think that created a really good policy and a space for the community to now be able to go in knowing, having the knowledge, the education, and given the platform in a space where it's ready.
Fantastic, thank you. All right, I come to Giada now, who is the director of Itaú Cultural Foundation, a foundation supporting culture and education across the whole of Brazil. And they have a very big focus on data. And as city leaders advocating for culture, one of the essential tools that we have is data. Why? Because in city government, we have to make the case for culture to many different audiences. And of course, the full value of culture, you can't count it all on a spreadsheet, but some of it you can. Which is why we have such a big focus on the World Cities Culture Report, which is the go-to data report on culture in global cities. And we're really delighted to be working with your foundation on our next report. Now, Giada, my question to you is, I know you're about to publish some new data on the impact of culture across Brazil. Can you give us a sneak preview? What are the 3 most interesting things you have learned?
Olá, bom dia. Obrigado por poder falar em português. Estou muito feliz de estar aqui e agradecer também o WCCS, que nós somos grandes parceiros aqui nessas pesquisas que estamos desenvolvendo conjuntamente. Bom, a Justine falou dos dados que o Itaú Cultural vem desenvolvendo já. Então, a gente desenvolveu um dado que é o indicador que é o GPD, esse indicador para conseguir debater com outros setores da economia, e na construção desse dado, a gente levou em consideração alguns itens. Por exemplo, gênero, raça, diversidade territorial e aí a gente conseguiu mobilizar e criar um indicador para isso. Outra questão importante foi conseguir ver os trabalhadores dessa economia. Então, a gente sabe que o valor desse PIB equivale a 48 bilhões de dólares, equivale mais ou menos 3,11% da nossa economia, que é muito maior que a indústria automobilística. Porém, quem está nos principais indicadores é a arquitetura, posteriormente primeiro é tecnologia, posteriormente arquitetura e publicidade. Esses setores, ele alavancam também os melhores salários. E é onde que a gente coloca uma luz e atenção? O trabalhador artístico, porque essa pessoa geralmente tem salários inferiores e informalidade também é alta, principalmente quando a gente fala de raça e gênero. Então, se a gente compara com outros setores da economia, a gente pode falar que a economia da cultura, importante frisar, cultura e das indústrias criativas, elas têm um salário 2 vezes maior que a economia geral, isso pensando no Brasil. Quando a gente vai para a indústria de games, são 4 vezes mais. Né? E aí, quando a gente olha no emprego, a gente tem que pensar onde os trabalhadores, né, os trabalhadores, pessoas pretas, estão inseridas, é justamente na música, na literatura, na dança, onde os salários não são melhores. Né? Então, quando a gente traz os dados, é justamente para trazer luz para esses 2 pontos, tanto do potencial econômico, mas aonde a gente tem que fazer políticas públicas para sustentar e subir o setor. Vou dar um spoiler aqui para vocês. A gente vai lançar essa semana, provavelmente amanhã, uma pesquisa que a gente já faz a 5ª edição, que é de hábitos culturais. Essa pesquisa, ela surgiu na pandemia justamente para entender o hábito cultural do brasileiro. E ela tem a perspectiva de saber qual que é esse impacto, né, no consumo cultural brasileiro. O que a gente percebeu ligado a muito que a Justine trouxe, da saúde mental. Quando perguntado, a tua participação com questões artísticas melhorou o relacionamento em casa, no trabalho, no lar, diminuiu a sensação de estresse e solidão, os dados dizem que sim, que é positivo, e as pessoas declaram que 80% tiveram benefícios. Então, isso já tem um dado que comprova. Outro dado que é específico para essa pesquisa é os pais falando da importância que tem do contato na arte e na cultura para os filhos. Justamente as questões importantes que você trouxe ontem sobre o relatório do Fórum Econômico Mundial, que é a empatia, pensamento crítico, a colaboração, a flexibilidade. Os pais declaram isso também. E quem está influenciando as crianças e as juventudes a ter o contato com a arte? Primeiro, novamente, são os pais, professores, escolas e universidade. E depois são os amigos. Então veja, né, como que essa rede que forma o indivíduo é extremamente importante para a gente fomentar e pensar na cultura. E mais um dado, assim, para fechar minha fala, é sobre emprego. Uma pesquisa que nós fizemos com 700 empresas de grande porte no Brasil, a gente identificou que no primeiro ano de trabalho, 70% desses jovens são mandados embora, são demitidos. É um dado extremamente relevante, crítico. E por quê? Como que eles estão chegando, como que as empresas estão lidando com essa juventude, mas principalmente o conhecimento técnico é alto, mas não tem soft skills. Então, por isso que o contato com a arte, com a cultura, com o pensamento crítico, saber ser liderar, trabalhar de forma colaborativa, é tão importante, a gente vê e traz formas aí de mensurar o impacto sobre isso.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Fascinating. All right, and now to Hani, who is Vice President of Innovation at the Institute of Design and Innovation here in Dubai, and has also been named one of the most influential architects in the Middle East and North Africa region. So Hani, my question to you is, in a new city like Dubai, where there is a lot of new infrastructure rapidly developing, what is the role of design?
Thank you so much, Justine. Assalamu alaikum. Great question. A city like Dubai attracts talent because it has great infrastructure and a great mindset. And according to Richard Florida, creative economy requires 3 pillars: infrastructure, mindset, and talent. So our role is to grow the talent because, mashallah, Dubai has an incredible infrastructure and the right mindset to push everyone towards innovation. So a city like Dubai already has 2 of the great foundations. The third thing is now what we are focusing on is to grow local talent, to actually shift the mindset from being consumers to become producers, whether of ideas, of culture, of critical thinking. I liked what Jader, he talked about design in the same breath as critical thinking and collaboration. And these are foundational for any community to develop innovation, is to encourage collaboration. And collaboration requires different-minded people, diverse-minded people, because if everyone's thinking the same, that's not collaboration. Yeah. Collaboration requires that we learn from each other as well as contribute to each other's ideas. And critical thinking, which is a core idea of design. So I would say well, we are on the right track, but we have a long way to go.
Fantastic. Very good. Very good. All right, let's do another round of questions before we hear from you. So if you haven't posed a question yet, do send one in. All right, I'm going to come back to Jada. As a private foundation, you're continuing to support creatives. What would you say works best with creatives?
Okay. Put your hand. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry. Nós somos uma instituição privada com espírito público. Então, todo o diálogo que a gente faz é pensando já em políticas públicas. Então, essas parcerias, tanto que a gente pensa numa formação, a gente tem no Itaú Cultural 6 mestrados, tá, e um doutorado que está saindo. Então, mestrado em gestão cultural, em economia da cultura, em mediação cultural. Então, como fortalecer o setor. A gente está olhando justamente quem está tomando a decisão. Tá? Outro ponto é como aprimorar o indicador das regiões. Então, a gente tem um diálogo com diversos estados e municípios para aprimorar esse dado. O outro também, que a gente está olhando, programas formativos para a juventude. Então, no contexto da Fundação Itaú, que tem educação e cultura, tem uma parte que é ligada ao ensino técnico profissionalizante, profissional. E é justamente ali também que a gente vê onde que pode, né, as pessoas que vão trabalhar no campo da economia criativa, pensando que a pessoa que criou esse painel, que está fazendo essa iluminação, né, as pessoas que estão criou a marca, né, está envolto na economia criativa. Então é um lugar também onde a gente olha na juventude para chegar depois no mercado de trabalho. Então é bem importante, a gente inclusive tem o GDP que nós adotamos, o Ministério da Cultura adotou como um dado oficial. E a gente está aprimorando esse dado, provavelmente no próximo ano, a gente vai fazer uma atualização desse indicador, que foi sempre feito usando série histórica e também bases públicas. Então, falar de governo, falar de universidade, para a gente é extremamente importante.
Thank you, yes. All right, next question to Alan Nude. Now, I know you've been talking to your students about their aspirations and the challenges they face. What kind of things are they telling you?
Actually, in preparation for this panel, I had a lot of discussions with them in our studios. First of all, about the creative industry in the Gulf region and the UAE in general, and to kind of just like hear their insights. There is less conversation about the larger scale conversations that we have, and about the strategies and the policies in place. And I think because they went into the industries with already set policies, but I think there are a lot of conversations about long-term stability in the industry and security. There is a lot of conversation as well that Jada brought up from the report, parents. Parents play a very big role, and I didn't realize how much there is an impact there until I started having those conversations with them. And the perception of the industry, of not necessarily the creative industry, but the perception of the workforce, their family members, their parents, their cousins even, about them going into graphic design or visual arts or product design or whatever it might be. And I think there is a lot more impact there than we think and we hold value towards. And I think that that's something that I probably did not expect as part of that conversation. But I think two main things was long-term stability and the security, as well as parents. Yeah. And they were brought in conversation more than you think. And funny enough, though, I do think that soon enough, we will have parents that graduated from those creative sector. But so far, we don't have any because the majors were inserted within educational institutions a little bit later. Or at least in Zayed University and then IUS and IUD and other institutions. So I don't think we still have parents that are encouraging their children to go into the creative sector because they haven't been introduced to it yet. But I think that round is coming very soon. So I'm very interested to see what would happen then, actually.
Yeah, yeah. I think lots of us can relate to that.
Yeah.
The power of parents.
Exactly.
Very good. Hani. So yesterday with our cities, I shared a statistic, which is that 60% of young people who are in school today will grow up and do a job that does not yet exist. And that's because of such rapid change in our employment environment. So from an education perspective, what skills do the next generation need when so much is unknown?
A beautiful question. This is a question that we asked ourselves when we started the school about 6-7 years ago. How do you future-proof the next generation? The answer is we don't know, but what we can do is we can widen their horizons. And before we spoke about collaboration, we like to call this next generation pie-shaped people. If you've heard of the expression T-shaped. Yeah, pie, like
pie-shaped.
The Greek letter pi.
Yeah.
T-shaped people are people who are deep in one field and able to work across different disciplines. A pie-shaped person, in our opinion, is someone who can work in multiple fields, and be deep in multiple fields and be able to cross different fields. So we call our students, we're going to celebrate Pi Day on 3/14, which is you know, a nerdy thing, but anyway. They get free pies, free pizza, free pumpkin pie, and all of that. Anyway, sorry for the digression. So pie-shaped people, in our opinion, are people who are hybridized. So in our curriculum, from day one, students learn design, technology, and strategy. So they have to learn coding, they have to learn AI, how to use AI, robotics from day one. So you see fashion designers working in robotics, and the results are incredible, I have to tell you, because now they're using their creativity with the latest tools. So there are no boundaries between the different disciplines, and they can put together a business plan from day one. So this has been very, very successful. We have a lot of success stories about this hybridization, but that's not enough. The second layer of hybridization is to actually have everyone double major. Everyone needs to double major. Yeah. So if you want to do wearables, which has a bright future, it's not enough just to do fashion design. You need to do fashion design, interactive design, or user experience design, or product design. So if you want to do ethical fashion, you need to understand the strategic understanding of what you're doing and the production way of making. So we focus on making, we focus on concept, we focus on communication, but the most important thing at the end of the day is care. Care. Why are you doing this? How are you going to improve the world? And so we want to use their creativity and combine it with critical thinking and ethical practices. So this hybridization, we believe, will give them the foundation to be able to be versatile. Now, it's a double-edged sword because some of the feedback we're getting is that when they graduate, and you talked about parents, Anud, I love that, because parents is I think who we need to educate first, right, to understand the power of design and culture and how they change cities. But what we're finding is that when our students are graduating, the market hasn't understood what hybrid means, what a pie-shaped person is, because they're looking for a graphic designer. But our graphic designer can do design and strategy. We have and I'll end with this, we have a wonderful case study where one of our students was hired by the Prime Minister's office to work as a graphic designer because she had combined multimedia and strategic design. She did very well, but they realized she has a strategic mind, and they asked her, how come? And she said, that's what they taught me. And like, what do you mean, design school? You learned strategic thinking? And she said, yeah. So now she's in the strategic part of the office of the Prime Minister. So it's really wonderful to see, but this is our challenge because we are still pigeonholing when we are creating hybrid pie-shaped people.
That's fascinating and very inspiring. All right, Tommaso, I have a question about time travel for you. As you look to the future, where do you see the biggest challenges in keeping Milan creative?
Wow, beautiful question. I think, well, first of all, I think that the two ingredients I mentioned, so space and contents, have to be very focused on the political agenda of a city like Milan, not to lose this protagonism in some branches of the creativity. Consider the city of Milan in the next 3 years is, well, my team, myself, the mayor of Milan, are leading the most important infrastructure plan ever, because it's more than 300 million of public finances that will be injected in the city of Milan to create new libraries, to create new spaces, to work on new museums, like Piazza del Duomo, for instance, will have a new tower dedicated to contemporary art and modern art museum for the development of the Museo del Novecento of Milan, one of the main museums of my city. And for instance, on the other hand, we are working on the biggest library of Milan, public library of Milan, 30,000 square meters dedicated to books, digital, social life. Working on the plan, we cannot forget how important it is to dedicate spaces that are, affordable for people, for new creative people, that are suitable for, new entrepreneurs in the field of culture, that are good for young generations who will create their own job. The 60% that you mentioned is incredible. We have to think, we have to force ourselves to think about the future and what will be and what is not now, what is not today. And none of us can skip considering also the damage of COVID-19, for instance, what has happened to our lives. Because we had a terrible global economical disaster that went to touch very directly the field of culture, as we all know. But also it made, on the other hand, the urgency and the need of people to live in social spaces that are economically affordable, that can be shared between people, because we are afraid of keeping and getting back to the intimate space of our houses. What we have lived for COVID was a trauma, was something traumatic. So I think to keep the city vibrant means to put in order all these different points, and to imagine that the politicians and the decision maker can work on an agenda that, in a sense that can sue all these different points, because it's a hard time, the one in which we are living. It's not easy. It's not easy to be a person who has a decision in his hands. But it's so important to think that the creative community of a city, of a community like mine, like Milanese community, is part of the health and will be determinant for the health of the city of the future. So that's what I think. That's what I think.
Yeah. We often say that the cultural world has long COVID. You know, it hit culture very hard, it hit young people very hard, very immediately. But there's a long tail. People carrying debt, people carrying emotional trauma, you know. So it's important to remember that. Yeah. Right, and finally to Bridget. So, continuing with time travel, thinking back to when you started your role and knowing what you know now, what would you tell yourself?
That's a really challenging question to someone who's been in the same job for 23 years. So, to my younger self, a number of things. Firstly, I would embrace planning as the superpower much faster.
Planning.
The power of planning to save cultural production space, the power of planning to shape our city, to make it a more livable and humanised city, and ensure creativity is part of the mixture and ingredients. We're doing that now in Sydney through the Creative Lands Trust and other mechanisms, but I wish we had had that lightning bulb earlier. The second thing is bring artists to the table sooner in the shaping of the city. Give them that seat at the table as we give other disciplines that seat at the table sooner. Because my experience is that artists have this incredible ability to translate and help mindset change and really listen intently to the aspirations of communities and help everybody come on that journey. I wish we'd done that earlier. The other thing I think I reflect on is we can't do it all in local government. So true partnerships can help us deliver things that are riskier. And that's not sponsorships, that's not grants, but true partnerships to do some risky things. Also, a lot of the work we're doing in Australia is trying to give recognition to our First Nations peoples who have been invisible in the public spaces of our city. And I've been working with my colleagues on this program in Sydney since 2008. One thing on reflection now is I would focus less on the outcome, the public art or the products. I would focus and really value more the process and the relationships that have been formed with our communities that create the trust that give us the license to act. And I think I really value now more the process. That is hard when you work in a political environment, when you've got deadlines and you have mayors and politicians who want outcomes. But I think we've learned we're in a long process of developing relationships and we have to give it the time. And the last thing that I've learned is a little bit, Haney, you reflected on that, kindness and nimbleness. Nimbleness and kindness. So a lot of the things we try to do as city makers and city shapers, it's like moving mountains. They take a long time. Most of the projects we work on take more than 10 years. But sometimes it's the little things that you do that are nimble and quick that can actually humanise and change the way people use a city. For instance, we bought 500 colourful tables and chairs. We put them out in the city and people decide how they want to use the city. They're simple things, but they're kind of acts of kindness that are actually allowing people to co-create the city with us, that create change, that are really simple. And to me, they're kind of design, strategy, simple things that designers and artists and city shapers can come up with that make a big difference to how we live in our cities.
Brilliant, brilliant. I'm scribbling. I'm taking notes for myself. So we've got some questions now from the floor, and one of them does build on some of the ideas you were just talking about. So someone has asked, what do you think artists bring to planning and decision making in your city? What do they bring? We know we need them, but what do they bring?
I think they help you turn your mind inside out and see things from a completely different perspective and kind of engage with people at an emotional level that, sorry if you're a traffic engineer or a planner, is a lot harder to do. And I think incredible listeners and incredible creativity of just seeing things so differently, which when you're making a city, why wouldn't you want to see it differently? And why wouldn't you want to think outside the square and think big and reach big? You know, we need to have big aspirations for our cities because it's hard to get there. You've got to shift the dial in a big way. So I've made a massive decision in my career to always work with artists because it's a hell of a lot more fun, it's a lot more stimulating, and it does turn your mind inside out.
Fantastic. All right. Now, other questions are, what can leaders do to keep cities affordable for creatives? Tommaso, do you want to go?
It's for me, I think.
To anyone.
I was looking at
Yeah.
No, well, it's a big matter, it's a big topic, because I think that in our cities, particularly the ones who are developing and getting more and more expensive, talking about the spaces, offices, houses, and living, generally speaking, in our cities, it's so important that who's leading the public process has the responsibility of creating some thresholds, some places that are for everyone, but can be affordable for a creative population. I was mentioning the infrastructure plan because you cannot imagine how important it is in planning the museums of the future and the libraries of the future of a city like Milan, this aspect of the affordable space. It's at the basis of keeping the creative international or local community in town, in the city. Because otherwise, if you don't create the conditions for that, of course, the risk is to lose the. What has happened in the last 15 years, for instance, in Milano, is an important process because many industrial architectures that used to be part of the industrial system of a city like ours has been converted into cultural spaces. Let's say we call them spazi officine creative, no? Spaces for creativity. There are many examples, like Base Milano is a hybrid space for culture and also for new entrepreneurs of culture. Fabbrica del Vapore, the steam factory of Milan, is an old project that can be put in those. In France, they call friches culturelles, the places that used to be like a tobacco industry or iron industry, and now they get into a cultural function. And it's important to stress this aspect, to create those kind of informal spaces that can be suitable for new creative. Also to project the works and the creative work of the future, as we said before, with the 60% that is really, really incredible. So I think again, I don't have the recipe, the perfect cocktail, but I know it is so important to put in the political agenda this aspect, because otherwise cities goes somewhere else, and it's a responsibility of the public.
Yeah, and of course that links back to Bridget's point about planning.
Yeah, it is directly, strictly linked to what you were saying, because it's all about planning then.
Planning is our superpower.
Yeah.
You can't be a creative city if you don't have creatives.
Yeah, yeah. Good. Would anyone else like to respond to that, or shall I go with a new one? Go.
Nesse ponto, para mim é importante a gente falar de economia, né, olhar sempre também com o lugar da economia, monitorar, avaliar e mensurar impacto. Porque às vezes algumas manifestações culturais a gente não tem esse hábito, essa prática que outros setores da economia têm. E veja, um encontro como esse mobilizou o turismo, o transporte, a gastronomia. Então a gente teve impacto aqui com outros setores da indústria. E falando de presente também, como que a gente chama de periferias, né, o que está fora do centro, a gente acaba olhando também da nossa manifestação. Então, valorizando o que está nesse lugar periférico é extremamente importante. Muito como ele falou, como que a gente valoriza manifestações populares, o rap, o slam, a literatura, As bibliotecas locais, a gente tem muitas bibliotecas, né, espalhadas pelo território, mais do que um museu, mais que uma galeria, mais que um teatro. E usar esses espaços também com convivência e espaços de troca. Na pesquisa que eu citei de hábitos culturais, tem um indicador muito importante que fala as pessoas vão para manifestações culturais em lugares públicos, lugares abertos. Então, como que a gente pensa também em possíveis ações gratuitas, né, onde as pessoas não precisam pagar? Para pagar para ir no museu é caro, né? Independente do país, da cidade que você está, né? E é para poucos. Então a gente tem que pensar em diversidade, pensar em inclusão e participação. Então esses pontos todos aqui são fundamentais para a gente pensar o futuro.
Fantastic. So this is a question about from the creative's perspective. So someone has said, if you are a creative, what strategies can you use to advocate for your own needs in cities or within bigger organizations? Do you want to go for that? Go for it.
I mean, I think that partially they're doing it without advocating when they become the success stories. And we see that often happening. And I don't think we would have had in different cities a national grant program if people did not see an opportunity to support and created strategy in order to support with national grants and other examples. But I think, I know it's kind of cliche to say, but the work speaks for itself. And having to, yes, be embedded within the industry and based on what Hani mentioned earlier as well, not necessarily in this like hidden box of your own studio, but also integrating the creative industry and other industry and kind of contributing to that as a whole. I think that's probably one of the methods that works best as we see already.
Fantastic.
The elephant in the room, honestly, building on Alanud, is attracting the investment in the cultural sector. And this is a burden on us creatives, because we need to be able to speak the language of business. We need to know how we can get investors who are interested in ROIs and KPIs and TLAs, three-letter acronyms, to basically be able to tell them, if you invest X amount in culture, this is what you will get back. This is on us, because I don't expect them to do it. And I've learned this just by being in an administrative position in the creative industry recently, because I've been mostly practicing. And when I come up with ideas and we discuss them, they love them, but then nothing happens. So in the last few board meetings, all I come with are spreadsheets. And it's amazing. They are animated. They take out their pens, and I'm looking, what? Is that what makes you tick? You've seen it, right? So we need to learn their language. Like we are teaching our students strategy and design, we need to learn to be able to speak to the investors the language, and that will make a fundamental shift. I'd like to, if you don't mind, to go back to the first question about
I did
art.
wonder. I was going to ask you that.
And I'd like to go back to your slides, if people remember, a wonderful slide where you had culture everywhere in every line. And this is exactly what we need to show them. Like, culture is infusing everything. And what art does to a city, I mean, people visit cities to go see the art. They don't go there to visit the banks, right? Thank you.
Yay!
And we don't go there to visit the sewage plants, right? The engineering, amazing engineering stuff they do. But I go to Rome to see the struggle between Bernini and Borromini and to see how they were actually telling us stories about them, about their culture, about their stories. That's why I would go to Rome. And it's one day is not enough.
But come to Milan as well.
Yeah, see. Yeah. yeah, I'll go see Bramante and
Rome is the capital. So
and, and Da Vinci and yeah. Okay, so you get my point, though.
I love it.
And so yeah, so I think I would just say that we go to cities to actually enjoy the culture, nothing more, nothing less. So we need to invest more in it.
Yeah, go on. Lots of hands now.
Just to sort of echo what you're talking about is, if you think about the impact of globalization, cities can start looking same. And without art and creativity, we can't tell our stories,
Yeah.
and therefore we don't express our identity. If we don't express our identity, we don't feel like we belong. So it's a sort of cyclical ecosystem, and it's so critical to keep that voice at the table.
A distinctive voice in a globalized world. Go.
No, apart from, I think that on one side we have to invest on democratic space and also to design a city that is accessible and also affordable, talking about money. But I also think that we have to project and design the new infrastructures for culture, also considering the fragile moment in which we are living. That is also a fragile moment because we have to interpret also the needs of people, the changes. Yesterday we were briefly talking aside of a panel that I was moderating with some colleagues about what does designing a new huge library in a city, in a European capital mean. And, you know, everything has changed in the last 20 years. There are people who consider the books over, the paper books. I'm not among those people. But because I think that books are still very relevant in our lives. But, you know, the digital frontiers have changed. The way we use the space also after COVID-19 has changed. The idea of designing a new public space for books is another idea. If it was 20 years ago, it was another era, it was another word. So I remember it is something that has to do with my experience in WCCS. When we were in Helsinki, the first thing I did is going to that marvelous library in which we met. And, you know, at one floor you could borrow books. On the second floor you could borrow musical instruments to see if your creative life, if your inspiration, if your, is to become a musician. The last floor was possible also to cook with people, with colleagues and friends. And so it opened me, it was very important for me, apart from the meeting of the wonderful colleagues that I meet every year at WCCS. It was very important to me because it opened my mind to answer to the question, what space can we design for the future? What are the needs of people, of the new creatives, again, of the new generation of creatives? And so maybe a kitchen and a place to try musical instrument is as important as the old function of borrowing books. And those are questions we have to put on the table.
Yeah, thank you. For those who don't know what we're talking about, when we had our World Cities Summit in Helsinki, one of the flagship projects in that city is an incredible library where you can sew clothes, you can learn a musical instrument. It's a very kind of holistic idea of a library for the future, and we were all very inspired by it. All right, I'm going to just start to bring it to a close now, and I'm going to ask a quick fire question to each panel member, which is, in one sentence, if you had a magic wand, what one thing would you change in your city, but it can't be more funding because that's just too boring. We all know that. Okay. Do you want to go? Go. Let's go down the track.
It would be a pathway through truth-telling to reconciliation to redefine our identity as a nation.
Wow. I should have come to you last. That would have been a good close.
Well, I would reduce more and more the distance between the university, the students' community,
Yeah.
and the politics. That's Milano is a city with 400,000 students, so it's a city in the city. We have to do more and more to involve them in the processes.
Yeah, very good.
I'd personally really like to see us exporting a creative cultural industry.
Yeah.
I think instead of importing, I would love to see us exporting.
Export. Good. Okay.
Vamos valorizar a diversidade, o gênero, a raça e desenvolver as habilidades socioemocionais.
I'll challenge everyone, like I challenge my students, basically go to a mall, instead of spending, see how much you can last without spending, without parting with your money, even a latte is spending, and instead use that time to produce new ideas.
Very good. Very good. Fantastic. Okay, so we're nearly at the end. I'm going to do my best to wrap up 10 things we've learnt today. So we have learnt, give art a seat at the table. We have learnt the importance of hardwiring culture into lots of different policy areas, from planning to transport. We have learned about the importance of taking culture out of institutions and formal structures and out into the city, the fabric of the city. We've learned about the importance of data, the importance of measuring it to help us make the arguments, to let us know who's missing from the stories, to help us understand what we need to do about it. We've learned that creative skills are life skills. Creativity gives you empathy, creative thinking, interpersonal skills, the soft skills that are often missing from education and from formal training. We've heard about 3 ingredients for a creative city: infrastructure, mindset, and talent. How consumers also need to be producers, and how design is about collaboration and critical thinking. We've learned that although young people don't know what the future jobs will be, they're going to design them themselves. We've learned that artists turn your minds inside out in a good way, and encourage big thinking. We've learned that small and simple things can make a big difference, as well as the big strategic work. We've learned how we need to understand the language of investors, and speak all these different languages, that two-way process. That people come to cities for art, not for banks. We've learned about the importance of culture as identity. Culture is how we express ourselves. It's how we give our distinctive voice to the world. And we've learned about the 4 Ps. The 4 Ps are policy. Planning is our superpower. We've learnt about parents being important, parents' perception, and we've learnt about the pie-shaped person. So, what we need is future creatives to have multifaceted skills, but what is more important than anything else is care. What are we bringing to the world we live in? So thank you all very much. Round of applause for our panel, and thank you all for coming.
Thank you so much. So, what a great conversation. 4 continents present here at our stage. That's amazing. Thank all of you for joining us this session and contributing to your questions. Please leave your translation headsets on your chairs and follow the ushers out of the building to enjoy more exceptional Emirati coffee. Thank you so much.